Years ago, I attended a party at a friend's house and I had a long conversation with a woman on the topic of religion because, that always seems to happen whenever people find out I'm a minister. It's just an occupational hazard. And she was fascinated by why and how anyone could possibly be a minister. Now, she wasn't being mean or dismissive, she was genuinely curious. And not just how could anyone be a minister, but why and how anyone could believe all of the things she thought you're supposed to believe in order to be a Christian. So even though she was nice enough, it felt a little like I was sitting on the witness stand to defend the entire Christian faith. She said that she had gone to church when she was a child, but she could no longer buy into stuff like miracles and prayers. But the biggest problem she had was believing this whole resurrection thing. She wanted to know how anyone could possibly take that story seriously. To her, it sounded like an unbelievable thing. And my response was, yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. And that's the whole point. Because you and I, at least, most of us, have attended plenty of Easter services over the years. And for a lot of us, maybe the Easter story has lost some of its shock value. It's just become an annual observance like Christmas. So, we're genuinely happy for it, and it matters. But it's also not late breaking news. It comes around every year just like clockwork. And with that kind of familiarity, I think we can lose the taste of just how unbelievable the Easter story really is. When Luke was writing his version of the resurrection, he completely agreed that it was unbelievable. Like the other gospel writers, he tells us that women had gone to the tomb where Jesus was buried to tend to his body. Now, that was just the custom in those days and in that culture. It was a sign of respect for the dead, a way for the family and close friends to process their grief. A deeply intimate and solemn and sacred duty. That's what they were doing. So, women were the first witnesses to the tomb of Jesus being vacant. Luke tells us it was Mary Magdalene and a woman named Joanna. There was also Mary, the mother of the disciple James, and other women whose names we never learn, very unfortunately. If nothing else, all of this tells us that it wasn't just one person, but a whole collection of women who had this same experience, and then of encountering a pair of strange men, angels apparently, who told the women that Jesus was indeed risen from the dead. So the women then go and tell this story to the disciples. When they hear this story, Luke says, it seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. Even after Peter runs to the tomb to see for himself what's going on, Luke doesn't tell us that Peter can make any sense of it, but is only amazed at what had happened. Now, we can't blame Peter or the other disciples or Mary Magdalene or Joanna or Mary, James's mother, or the other women for not believing their own eyes and ears. It's true that you and I live in a more scientific age these days where we like to see hard evidence to prove that unbelievable things might be true. We want to see the lab results. So we might assume that cast of characters in the Bible were less prone to our sense of rational skepticism, but we're really not that far removed from the day and age of first century Jerusalem, at least when it comes to someone who's dead, no longer being dead. That's just not how nature has worked in any point in history. Dead is dead, right? We also know each of the gospel stories differ in the details about what happened that Easter morning, and skeptics can point to those differences as proof that it is just an idle tale, something we should not take literally, but as an analogy. Or that the resurrection stories about Jesus, well, they fit into a certain category or genre of literature or myth, because there had been previous tales from earlier cultures where a dead God comes back to life. Now, all of that may be true, and that discussion or debate is interesting as far as it goes. And I also think it's perfectly okay to say that you're a true blue follower of Jesus, even if you have doubts about his resurrection. It's fine. If you do have doubts, you're actually in very good company, and God loves you just as much anyway. It does not mean that you're not a Christian in my book. But personally, I'm over and done debating anybody about the resurrection of Jesus. I am more than happy to simply say that yes, it is an amazing story and it is unbelievable. Thing is, I'm a firm believer that we need and we yearn for amazing, unbelievable stories, and that we especially need this one, because this is the one we have that's been passed down to you and me. And it's a sacred story, not because it could be proven or disproven. That's missing the point entirely. It's sacred precisely because it goes beyond anything we can prove. I love the novel by Carl Sagan called Contact and the movie that's adapted from that book. It's a science fiction story about what happens when an advanced alien civilization makes contact with the modern world. The main character is an astronomer named Ellie, who is a dedicated atheist. As a child, both of her parents had died. First, her mother had died when Ellie was an infant, and later, her father, who raised her and who encouraged her interest in science, he died when she was only 9 years old. In the film, the adult Ellie has a conversation one night with another character, a Christian writer named Palmer. Ellie has a problem with Palmer saying that, as a person of faith, he can believe in something that he cannot prove. Because as a scientist, Ellie needs hard evidence to prove anything. So Palmer asks her a question. He says, "Did you love your father?" She says, "Yes, of course." And he replies, "Prove it." So for me, that's the same territory that Easter occupies. It's that space where my mind and my heart intersect. And the older I get, and hopefully the wiser I get, that intersecting space is only growing, where I don't find it necessary to prove to anyone what I believe is true. Nor do I demand of you that you somehow prove your truth to me. I'll take your word for it. These days, we seem to be increasingly living in a world of beliefs competing for our allegiance. Many beliefs can cause great harm, of course. The belief that a person's skin color makes them inferior, that is a belief worth fighting against. Or the belief that a person's gender defines their ability to achieve anything is hogwash. Or the belief that a person's sexual orientation or gender identity defines their morality. That's a belief that needs to be tossed into the nearest dumpster. So there are plenty of beliefs that do need to be challenged because we can prove that they are objectively false and that they do cause great harm. But the belief I'm interested in, the same kind of belief in the story of the empty tomb, is one we'll never be able to prove, but we still hold on to and grow into because it cannot be proven. It's a belief that matters and makes life worth living. It makes it worth getting up day after day and trying when others say that you ought to give up. It makes it worth taking a risk anyway when others tell you that something's just too risky. It makes it worth sacrificing your time and your effort, your money, on a cause that others have given up on. It makes it worth reaching out to someone you've wronged and asking them for forgiveness. It's the belief in belief itself, in faith, hope, and love. When someone says, "I believe in you," and you say that you believe in them, that's faith, hope, and love flowing between you. Why are we here otherwise, if not to share and experience that? Why do we even bother to keep going if not for believing that there is so much more to life, both in this life and a life beyond this one, that, in all honesty, is such a mystery, that's so unbelievable, that's so amazing. That is the essence of love and the power of love. It's to believe the unbelievable. 32 years ago, the documentary filmmaker Ken Burns premiered his epic 9-part series, The Civil War. The genius of Ken Burns has always been to take an enormous story and to humanize it, to bring it down to a size that we can digest. At the close of the very first episode, accompanied by beautiful music called Ashokan Farewell, he introduces us to a soldier in the Union Army, Major Sullivan Ballou of the 2nd Rhode Island Infantry. On the eve of the First Battle of Bull Run on July 14, 1861, Sullivan Ballou wrote a letter to his wife, Sarah. He wrote, "My very dear wife, indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. I cannot describe to you my feelings on this calm summer night when 2,000 men are sleeping around me, many of them enjoying the last, perhaps, before that of death, and I, suspicious that death is creeping behind me with his fatal dart, am communing with God, my country, and thee. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break, and yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on with all those chains to the battlefield. The memories of all the blissful moments I have spent with you come crowding over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to God and you that I have enjoyed them so long, and how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together and seen our boys grow up to honorable manhood around us. I know I have but few claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me. Perhaps it's the wafted prayer of my little Edgar that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed if I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, nor that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. But oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you in the garish day and the darkest night, amid your happiest scenes and gloomiest hours, always, always. And if the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath, or the cool air cools your throbbing temples, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me. Think I am gone, and wait for me, for we shall meet again." Sullivan Ballou and 27 of his men died in battle 1 week later. Now, do we believe Sullivan and Sarah met again? Of course. But if so, how? And can we prove it? Of course not. But we don't need to. It's a holy mystery. But I believe, I do believe, I have to believe. And if the empty tomb of Jesus proves anything, it's that God's love, all the love that exists in the universe and that knits us together forever, a love that does not even posit death, that love is simply unbelievable.